Yada da dum, 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 do wah wah. Ow. Yada da dum, da 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 dum, da 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 da, yada da 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 dum, do 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 do, da 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 dum, do wah wah. Dun 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 da 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 dum da 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 dum ba da da dum ba da da dum ba da da dum da 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 dum ba da da dum ba. Whew, man, that Doctor Who theme is exhausting. Ooh, wah, wah. Oh. Dun, 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 it ends with that super weird sound. I can't do that sound. Okay. Woo-wee. Now this chat stream, this comment stream is going to be off the chizane during this video. I can feel it already in my bizones. So if I don't have a chance to respond to everybody's opinions, thoughts, and feelings, just cut me a little sliznak, will you? Here we go. I got to come out of the internet somehow. Trapped behind this stinking logo. Great gods of Pathfinder, ye are many and mighty. Bring me forth from this darkness. Whoo! I'm out. I'm out to blackness. Man, it's dark in that internet. Greetings, programs. Your old buddy Ingrid Bernal here. That's me. Your old friend from Runehammer, the northern land where the mountains meet the sand and the waves turn into rain. Hey, guys. It's me. It's Hankrin. I'm back, and I am holding on for dear life right now because I'm a bit nervous about the live stream today. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Great to have you. This is a timely topic. Now, normally I don't do such timely things because A, I tend to be a very late adopter of things. I tend to be like showing up years after other people already have decided if something's cool or not. But also because timely things can be very thorny, very prickly. So like what's happening like right now with stuff in general, both in the hobby and beyond, can be very prickly. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of opinion that doesn't have foundation yet, kind of like all of mine that you're going to hear today, because the real sort of guts are in the near future and at the very bleeding edge of what's happening. Bleeding edge, very cool Silicon Valley thing that people are saying nowadays. Even saying Silicon Valley is outdated. What am I doing? Anyway, when you're on that bleeding edge, there tends to be a lot of hackles rising and strong feelings. So I was having those very same strong feelings. So here it is. I decided to just set all of it aside, to not try to have such a thesis with things, and to just, as usual, just be myself, hit you guys with some realness, and let you know like what's going on. Okay, so thanks for tuning in. Today's live stream, it's Friday afternoon. Everybody's winding down from a tough work week, right? And we're starting to think about this weekend. Maybe we're going to get some new stuff. Maybe we're going to run some games. We're going to bring in some new ideas, whatever. And so to me, it was a good Friday theme to just drop this stream right now. I want to talk to you guys about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Dear Lord, is it upon us? Is it upon us? Oh, wait. Which way do I look? I'm not a trained news television professional. Here we go. I see the cover. There it is. So, those of you who are familiar with Pathfinder are probably one of the many fans of Pathfinder out there. Pathfinder has been a wellspring of amazingness. So before we get into 2nd edition, let's just throw back just a little bit. Pathfinder goes all the way back. The initial playtest was announced, I believe, in 2007. And their basic mission was to take D&D 3.5 and to wrap it in a saran wrap time capsule for all time. To take that D20 rollover core and the overall sort of bonus calculation and penalty calculation core that was D&D 3rd edition, and to preserve it, because they probably knew that D&D was going to keep iterating into other editions, and they saw that as like something to preserve, really a beautiful stance to take. And they not only preserved it, they filled it with so much incredible life. So those of you who have been Pathfinder fans for the past 10 years, the playtest I believe was 2007, but Pathfinder 1st edition really dropped, as the kids say nowadays, in and by kids I mean me, in 2009. So that's 10 years of Pathfinder we've been enjoying, and their supplements have been amazing. I still think Rise of the Runelords is one of the coolest sort of campaign adventure books ever. Their monster pawns are fantastic. A lot of their monster designs, honestly, I have completely ripped for my games. My all-time favorite probably being the Yellow Musk Creeper. They have my fandom just for that creation right there. And they have, I mean, Ultimate Equipment was an amazing book. Ultimate Combat was super cool. Really, the whole Ultimate series was awesome. Pathfinder has created this huge, wonderful shelf existence, and especially for the true fans out there, which I can't count myself as one. I have maybe 5 Pathfinder books, and I know there are at least 40 or so out there. There's a boatload of these things. They also did something unique, is that they rallied around these iconic characters, and this was very unique, at least in my experience in their day, is that they had these iconic characters visually developed by Wayne Reynolds, the original sort of core artists of Pathfinder, who I still think is the most innovative and most influential artist of the 21st century in our hobby, period. And they took some of this work and created these iconic characters, which have now lasted into 2nd edition. But these iconic characters are the ones you see on the GM screen. They're the ones on the front page of the classes and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you all know them and will recognize them when you see them. My favorite is probably Crow, the Blood Rager. But anyways, I just love Wayne Reynolds' designs, and then they would sort of design these iconic characters, and then they provide color miniatures for these characters, and just like all the way the whole thing stitched together was just musical, just harmonic. It was amazing, and it was fun to be a part of and to watch. I was never a diehard Pathfinder fan or player. Not fan, but player. Definitely was a fan. But I was always ripping them off. I was always skulking around on the internet and getting Pathfinder ideas. And eventually, break down and get a few things like Rise of the Runelords. I really prize that book. I refer back to that book quite a lot because I love the structure of how they perceive campaign growth. And I just want to get this history lesson and my experience with Pathfinder from its inception out of the way, because I don't want this video to seem like bleh. Now, I know that Mathfinder 2nd edition is coming out, and that joke is on everybody's lips, right? Mathfinder. You've got floor tiles making reflex saves with a plus 27. This is stuff that happens in Pathfinder. But I honestly think that the joke about Mathfinder, that there's a lot of mathematic or numeric or even mechanical complexity in Pathfinder, is totally unfair. Totally, totally, totally unfair. I do not think that Pathfinder is mathematically complex. I don't think that there is some kind of problem with having a 10th level character with a plus 12. And then I also have several spells in place that are, maybe adding up to another plus 10. So I have a plus 22 and I'm trying to beat a DC of 40. I don't see that as problematic. Using D20 rollover with highly variable bonuses and penalties is not complex. And that truly is the heart of Pathfinder. Let's all just make sure we see Pathfinder for what it really is. It is not mathematically messy. It is really terribly simple. And I think it's easy to troll Pathfinder when you say, look at their new character sheet, or even their old character sheet for that matter. There's a lot of bubbles and there's a lot of things to fill in. But honestly, we're RPG game masters. Very few of the game masters I know, even the lifers, really just use every little bubble and use every dynamic and every mechanic and make sure that every little bonus is accounted for, because that isn't terribly fun. And that does sound sort of mathy and a bit slow at the table, right? But playing Pathfinder is not that. Playing Pathfinder is exploring Golarion and exploring these iconic characters and some very inventive monsters and stripping them to whatever level of detail fits your group. And for some groups, that's as simple as having 6 classic stats, having some feats, and having some bonuses, and we're ready to rock. I've got a freaking Jabberwocky with 70 hit points. It's got plus 10 on all of its rolls. It's got a couple of fun abilities like biting and devouring and maybe a claw that's an AoE. We're in business. We're playing Pathfinder. Then we have a moment where we have a Blood Rager, and he's got a bit of a head scratcher feat where it's like, I think I get 3 attacks right here. Does that seem crazy? And like, oh, well, no, that sounds good to me. They're all plus 8. Let's roll them up. D20s, damage dice. It's all very familiar. It's all 3rd edition D&D, and it is not Mathfinder. That is not fair, and I honestly think it's a very reductive and trolly internet era critique of Pathfinder. The guts of Pathfinder are some of the best things that D&D ever was, preserved over time. And I've had a blast enjoying the past 10 years how Pathfinder has taken such a different angle. They took the angle that the roots and the core of what we do will not be modified. What we'll do is build a taller structure on top of this strong, strong foundation. That, to me, was the mission statement of Paizo, and it won a whole world of fans. And it deserves those fans. Now, I think this sort of coarse critique of Pathfinder, that it has too much detail, is also not really that fair. Detail is great for some people, and some people really like more in-depth descriptions of this, that, and the other item, and I don't think there's a lot of constructive thinking to be done if you say Pathfinder's too detailed, I'm out of here. I really don't. I think that Pathfinder has such a great way of building upon itself that as long as you just understand those fundamental roots, you don't need to critique all those details because you're probably not going to use them in play. Now they're there, but I can't imagine a group with the acumen and the memory and the time, honestly, to really break it down. There's only one group I know of that can do that, and that is the Order of the Amber Die. Their mission statement for the past several years has been to play Pathfinder material exactly as it's written. And this is a very daunting undertaking, but it's their unique angle on things. And if you guys don't know the Order of the Amber Die, you've got to check it out. Absolutely amazing demonstration of the wonders that can await when you play exactly by canon and exactly as written. But you'll also notice they play marathons, huge marathons, 24-hour marathons, week-long marathons to try to get these modules played out. So I don't think that it's very useful for us to just be like, Pathfinder has too much detail and there's too much math, I'm out. I really don't think that's a very good analysis of what we're looking at. So what are we looking at? That's what I'm here to talk about on this video, and most importantly, to help you guys with my research on whether or not you want to make the investment. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Bitburger. Delicious. Okay. Hey, it's Finn. Before we go on, I really want to quickly say this does not always happen at 2 a.m. I've been streaming at different times of day, all kinds of different times of day recently to try to help everybody out with that problem. So I'm doing my best. Okay. First of all, Pathfinder, get 2nd edition. Get ready and brace yourself a little bit. You may not realize this, and I don't think I fully did, even though I knew 1st edition quite well. I don't think I was quite ready. When I went on Amazon and I'm getting my stuff all lined up and getting excited, to really get what Paizo is telling you is the core of this experience is going to be 3 to 4 books and 1,400 pages or more of material and like $200. So that's intense to me. Now, for a true Pathfinder fan, I don't think this is going to be daunting. the Kickstarter era has punched up the price of buy-in on RPGs to such a point that I don't think generally folks are that shocked at a $200 buy-in on what you could be considered, an industry standard cutting edge game. This is the enormous 640-page core rule book, which you're seeing over here, and then the absolutely indispensable bestiary, which is 400 monsters, I believe somewhere around 500 pages, and the game mastering book, and the player's guide, or character guide, I believe it's called, for their sort of newer world lore, which is Lost Omens. So if you really get those and you're set to play, you have got a lot of dime that you're dropping and a ton of stuff to process. Now that can actually be fun too, but I just want to get that out there. And I don't think I need to belabor you with the exact totals. They can actually go up significantly if you get the special edition ones with the cool plain covers with the gold leaf and stuff. So you really can be doing a massive buy-in here, and that's with no miniatures and no other sort of accoutrement, so to speak. So I feel like in some ways that's really tough on young players. Like for a 13-year-old kid to get some buy-in from mom and dad for this feels pretty dang rough. So I don't feel personally accosted by the sort of overpricing here, but I definitely can't give them a big happy thumbs up on their price of buy-in on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. To me, it seems pretty rugged. It seems pretty gnarly, especially when you see WotC doing some really fun maneuvers with their new boxed essentials kit showing up in Target for a really good price, and you're getting smaller versions of things to just get you into the hobby, and then later say, hey, you want to get crazy? We can get crazy. You can drop $500 on this stuff. Get some Dwarven Forge. You're going to be in the $2,000 range, right? But I just want to put it out there. That price to me is a bit of a barrier as far as what I perceive to be Pathfinder's only possible reason for doing a 2nd edition, which would be to provide a sense of newness to accrue new players. I can't imagine that longtime Pathfinder players were chomping their teeth, especially after seeing the playtest book of 2nd edition, to spend another $1,000 on Pathfinder materials, especially if they already have $2,000 of materials on their shelf. So to me, this is a little bit of a misfire here. It doesn't feel smart to price Pathfinder so hardcore. So there's my first, I guess, what might be a critique. Is why y'all gonna make it so expensive? At least give me a essentials book that is all 4 of the key books boiled down to 1/4 their size and jammed together that I can buy for $80 or something. Even something like that would be a nice gesture. So anyways, dang, wow. I don't want PDFs. I want books. I know that there are PDFs, but I really can't critique pricing on PDFs because PDFs just are vapor, really. They disappear into piles of PDFs. They live on tablets and things and scrolling, and my eyes start to melt in water when I try to read robust PDFs, especially something as robust as this. So maybe there is a sort of newer generation that sees tons of value in PDFs. Lord knows I'm thankful for them. That's part of how I make my living, is PDF sales. But for me as a gamer, I like books. Okay, price. Enough beating that horse, right? Okay, the next one, and this is a super common critique, and I actually also think this is somewhat unfair. There's too many things for players to do. They get too many actions, and they have too many interesting combos and synergies, and it slows down play. It does slow down play. Even ye old Matt Mercer has commented that they switched to 5e for Critical Role because Pathfinder was just too slow and mechanically intricate to really be quick moving for a show. So it's not like this isn't true, but I don't see this as a critique. This is the game that they wanted to create for the audience that loves this stuff. It's not something that's wrong with Pathfinder, that you have double and even triple actions, or that you can find subtle nuances and synergies between feats, equipment, and capabilities and spells and class features, and use those synergies to create superpowered combinations and deliver them in game. As a matter of fact, I think that is actually Pathfinder's greatest strength, is that players can do that. Players with high mental acumen and a tremendous memory for mechanics and details, and a good habit for flipping quickly at the table and being ready for their turn, make brilliant role players. I don't think it's something wrong with Pathfinder. And just now this is actually coming up. So again, I'm not going to levy that against them. That's not a critique. Be ready for plenty more of that in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. They do have one key improvement in that area, which they've used some iconography in the 2nd Edition book, which makes it a little quicker and easier to evaluate the action cost of what you're doing as a player. And I like that they did that. Unfortunately, and here's where I really got to hit them, I do think that that is one of the very few substantive innovations. And before I get into what Marshall set up there, which I really think is an important topic that should not be mentioned in a reductive way, this is my biggest critique. I don't really see a substantive, much less $200 innovation here over 1st edition. And I actually have, that was kind of today's assignment a little bit, and last night while hanging out on the couch, was to really do some in-depth comparison here and take a look at these together. And as a person who really has had that book for a long time and always has looked at it to do some chin scratching, always thought about it as state of the art as far as character design and class design and progression design. But then to see this new book that I spent $55 or $60 on really does not offer me anything new. That to me is deeply troubling, and that is something I wanted to put out in this video. I still think Pathfinder is quite brilliant. It's very thorough, it's very big, it's interesting. It's almost like cracking into a textbook for a college course, which I think can be a really fun feeling for an RPG researcher, right? Or a GM who's meaning to play tomorrow night. But I don't see a reason that they deserved my money. I still think the 1st edition book is a great book, and the supplements that came after it are brilliant. And I don't see 2nd edition actually making any of my 1st edition material obsolete. So why would I buy the new bestiary except to get a few new monsters? Now, this doesn't really give a solid critique on their new follow-up stuff, their new adventure paths that are coming, which may still really be worth buying, even if you don't need to think in terms of 2nd edition, because you're still dealing with bonuses in the 20s at times. You're still dealing with a very similar level 1 to level 25 power curve. If you're familiar with Pathfinder and you're easy with all those numbers, these are still going to be easy for you. You're just going to get a few new class options. Things are written in a slightly improved way. And you do have a couple new tidbits here and there, like denting shields. I think fighters got a little bit of love. If you know the classes really well, you're going to see tweaks. And of course, all that work has been done by a bunch of awesome, smart people. But they did not anywhere near innovate their core conceptual roots anywhere near like what WotC did from D&D 4th edition to D&D 5th edition. And to me, that's really worth having those two books in opposition. Now, say what you will about 4th edition. I know that it's a bit of a whipping boy in our hobby. But 4th edition D&D and 5th edition D&D do not function together. That, to me, is substantive. That is a substantial reason to consider 5e D&D. Let's say you're playing 4th edition for quite a while, and then 5e comes out. You don't just wonder, well, why would I even buy that? It's a very, very different game with reconsidered mechanics. And even by Mike Merle's own words, those 5th edition mechanics and innovations were all designed to draw new players into the game. I, for the life of me, can't figure out what Pathfinder's agenda is with 2nd edition besides just making me buy the same book again. That's my toughest critique I can deliver to them. I have a few more, but that's my toughest one. Okay, now before I move on to the book itself as a sort of an artifact or a work of art, I want to talk about what Marshall mentioned up above, and I want to be a little bit harsh with it. Now, people sense this thing with, I think, what's being called gender activism or social justice warrior stuff. So this is the absolutely positive trend in all media to be more inclusive to underrepresented voices in our culture and in our media at large. And this is a thing we need to freaking do. You're going to see a little bit of it in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And to me, that's an improvement. You're going to see less like metal-clad bikinis. You're going to hear a little bit more mixed pronoun language and stuff. If this stuff somehow angers you, for one thing, get with it and just set yourself aside and see how important this is for our times. Just follow Wheaton's law. Don't be a dick. It's okay that we bring in more and more representation for underrepresented voices. It's a damn good thing, and it makes everything more interesting, and it burns more brain power to include more people and welcome them to our glorious hobby. So it's a good thing. Now, of course, there are times when it can be sort of awkward or it can be klutzy or forced. I can't deny that. But as an overall agenda, it's a beautiful agenda, and I hope to see more of it everywhere I look in the near future. You're going to see some in Pathfinder. But I don't think that has really anything to do with the core of critiquing this as a game. Now, if you really want, sort of busty, bikini-clad, blonde women, hanging on to Conan and stuff, those products are out there and they're very well represented, and there's lots of them, so rock on. But I do think there's something beautiful in changing some of these perceptions and bringing in underrepresented voices and imagery that represent those voices into all our products and media. So I'm just going to have to say hell yeah on that front. Okay. Now let's sort of get back to the guts of what this thing really is. It's a book, right? Now, especially if you go into Barnes & Noble, like you don't get this on Amazon. You go into Barnes & Noble, you can put your hands on this bugger. They don't shrink wrap it in the bookstore, so you can just go ahead and start looking and start thinking. Is it a great artifact to own? The bookcraft in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I do think is an improvement on 1st Edition. It's better organized. It's a little easier to read and to skim and to bookmark. They have a really neat little clock system on the right side of the page, which 1st Edition does not have. This forms a little, a little index clock right over here. And this highlight right here moves down through the chapters and is visible from the side of the book. That is brilliant. You don't have that in 1st Edition, right? So I know that may seem small, but these things really matter when you're talking about wearing a book out at the table. I also think that the way that they have parsed character data is really good. For a player, this is a fun book to have. I mean, I would never want to put this thing in my backpack. But if you were a player at the table, really fun to use player sections. And I gotta say, I love how on the front, I don't know if I can just pull it up like at will here, but on the front of each class entry, they have like a narrative explanation of that character class. Hey, thanks, Nicholas. I owe you a drink. The classes narratively describe what they are before they get you into the crazy, into the details, right? And I love how they've arranged it. They basically arranged it by saying, in combat, you might do. In role-playing situations, your character might da-di-da-di-da. During exploration, you might find yourself d-d-d-d-d. And each one is different per class. And I think this is some of the most useful stuff they have ever written for their character classes. The mechanical and artistic component of Pathfinder can be so cool, it can be slightly overwhelming to forget, like, hey, I'm a player over here. I'm supposed to be the cool person. I know Pathfinder's world is really fleshed out, but I made my own Pathfinder character. I'm not an iconic, and I'm over here. And to me, these character class entries in this narrative form are absolutely brilliant. In a way, they remind me of Kelsey Dion and the Arcane Library, how she does these dramatic questions in her adventures. Before she hits you with what the adventure is, just hits you with a single question. In many cases, it's like, will the characters survive the Sharkmen? Or how will the characters manage to reach the island? Stuff like this. Answer this in a narrative way. Consider the possible narrative answers. Okay, now let's get into all the math and stat blocks, okay? Hey, Sean, thank you. I owe you a drink, brother. So that's a big improvement. As you get toward the back of the book, you start to feel, have you guys ever read The Monster at the End of this book, starring Grover? One of my all-time favorite books. The whole book, the whole time he's telling you, don't turn the page. There's a monster hiding. Don't turn the page. There's a monster hiding. You get to the end of the book, and it's just Grover. And he's like, oh, it was just me. And he kind of gives you a hug, and that's the end. As I was reading second edition, and this happened to me with first edition too, but I was dreaming they would fix this. I started getting this sinking feeling. Now, I don't know if you guys are like me, but I don't look at the table of contents that much. I like to discover the book, especially the first few times I'm really sitting down with it and spending time with it. I started feeling like, oh no, I'm 500 pages in, and I don't think I'm going to get any maps or any monsters or any actual material. It's like, oh no. So then I started looking back. I start picking through the book. I realize that the book is very, very carefully omitting any mention of enemies. Monsters are really only mentioned in their world lore section. They're kind of like missing, and like they're missing. So you're talking about all these weapons and all these characters who can do incredibly destructive, war-driven behaviors and all the things they do to survive in a violent world. And there is no sign in this book of a violent world. There is not one hint at how I might just throw a quick goblin together. Now, I've been an RPG player for ages, so I know a goblin's, going to have like AC 14, it's going to have like 12 HP, it's going to have like 1d6 plus 2 sword attack, and it has a free hide action and all that good stuff, right? But I get none of that in this book. And I really feel that the how to play and the game mastering section in this book are just short-circuited. Now, there is a lot there. I think the game mastering section is maybe 70 pages or so. But in that 70 pages, I feel at least half of it was dedicated to explaining the retread of our game. Yeah. Okay, Raptor, take it easy. So, it felt like retread in the Game Master section. And what I mean by retread is like, a role-playing game is a thing where you sit down with your friends, and then other stuff, which is like, you're going to need an arranged time when people come over to your house. And I'm just like, woof. Okay, so now here we come into what might be my final critique. Let me talk to Gerard's comment really quick. Pathfinder 2nd edition is Paizo's answer to 5th edition. It's a more streamlined edition of 1st edition to draw new players. I don't know if you've really done a lot of the research into the book, but this is not streamlined in any way over 1st edition that I can see as substantial. It's still large compound bonuses and penalties, D20 rollovers with high DCs, and lots of fun feats that crisscross into synergy. And again, actually, Gerard, thank you for the comment, because this rolls right into my final and biggest critique for Pathfinder 2nd edition. I don't know what went wrong here with the editing. This book feels like it was not edited. There is so much text that really should just be cut, especially if your agenda, supposedly, is to draw new players. I could say fully half or more of the text in this book can be cut. It can be cut. It is saying the same things, or, and I think this is most of the Pathfinder's sort of new creative staff behavior. Now, don't get me wrong, Jason Bullman are reiterating X several times to make sure players and GMs don't negative X or opposite X. And what I mean by that is, okay, I'm rolling a barbarian. So it'll be like barbarian. And then underneath it'll say, barbarians have access to barbarian skills. This kind of stuff. And what it does is I think it's reiteration that prevents being. It's also known as naming your goldfish, if you guys have heard this phrase. It's a creative phrase that means we really like all the little things we wrote. And no, we can't cut that. No, we can't cut that. That's cool too. No, I like the thing where I mentioned that, dungeons don't have flat floors. We have to leave that paragraph in there. No, we can't cut that. No, we can't cut that. This is called naming your goldfish. It means that when things just need to die, you get sad for no reason. And I really feel this syndrome struck terribly on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And I'm not that critical of this sort of syndrome. I think a lot of people will enjoy having a 650 pound book. That's a funny Freudian slip. A really big, really detailed book. I don't think that's a bad thing. What I don't like about it, and this is my sort of cautionary note to all you Pathfinder fans who are really thinking about this, I think there's a bit of a mindset in Pathfinder 2nd Edition which in some ways almost talks down to the reader. And it does so by reiterating. And it does so by stating the obvious as a stat block. So just anecdotally, I started a funny thing last night, which I'd been thinking about all week, which I was going to troll Pathfinder 2nd Edition in a humorous way with little cell phone photos of the book. Because I've been living in this book all week. I've been reading as much of it as I can to be as fair as I can in this video. So I was taking some funny little photos you guys may have seen on Twitter. And I just got too many funny cases that cracked me up. And so I decided I needed to abort that little project because it was just going to sound like I was trolling, which I really don't want to do. I really still think this is a state-of-the-art magnum opus of our hobby. It's quite impressive. But there are so many of those little cases that made me feel funny, like I was being talked to like a 6-year-old. I don't like that feeling. And you know, the book that I can cite as the exact opposite of that style, a book that Paizo could learn a ton from, is this book, Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, which arguably is some of the greatest, most concise, most intelligent writing ever in an RPG. The other one that comes to mind that was like that is Astounding Swords and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. That book also written by a true genius in a way that anyone can understand because it uses language in an approachable but highly intelligent fashion. I think, dear Pathfinder writers, if you are watching or if you have any stake in my opinion about your book and coming books, please hear this critique. Speak upward to your readers. Expand their minds with your language rather than thinking, oh, you're a beginner, so we'll talk to you like a beginner to welcome you. I don't think this is a great way to welcome people to the hobby. I think a great way to welcome them is to be extremely concise and brief and to the point in a way that uses language naturally. Not to repeat yourself, to reiterate, and to explain things honestly, even a kid could easily improvise. Okay, one last critique, and then I want to get to the things that I think are absolutely kick-ass about this book. It's a bit of a marathon, right? Well, we've only been going, I don't know, 25 minutes. Yeah, and for those you guys in the comments, Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition it's worth its own video, honestly, because it's freaking genius. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Okay, last critique. This one isn't as deep cutting as the one I just mentioned. The stuff I was just mentioning is deeply conceptual. It's kind of yikes, you know. And I don't feel tremendously comfortable being critical of Paizo because I do think they're sort of industry standard. I do think they're cutting edge. I do think it's an expansive, wonderful game to live in, and its fans are testament to that. So I don't want to just come on the internet and be like, nah. And that's why I'm trying to make sure to be very accurate and fair with what I think about it. But there's one area where they kicked me right in the budgie. Just right in me tucker. They got me right into John Thomas, they did. Now, Wayne Reynolds is only one mortal human being. For those of you who are not familiar with Wayne Reynolds' work, I strongly recommend that you either do a Google search on Wayne Reynolds' art or look at his amazing art book, which I believe is called Visions of War. He is in my mind, one of the true inventors of Pathfinder. He is someone, in my mind, who dared to take classic fantasy that we all know and love, that we've been playing and dreaming about for years, decades, and he dared to imagine it his way. And I think in the beginning, it was really strongly critiqued, almost like as an anime type look, like as a a great digression from what real fantasy art is supposed to look like. But as the years went forward, and he continued to just load Pathfinder with so much innovative and kinetic artwork that just brought the Pathfinder world to life in a way that I don't think any other RPG has ever been brought to life. Like, do this Google search on this guy. It is astounding how exciting the world of fantasy imagination becomes in his hands. But, and that's a capital B, this is a big old but, Wayne Reynolds is just one person, and I know or intuit, I don't know it honestly, that his ability to just continually fire hose this level of brilliant art has got to be a little bit of a fatigue component for him. So we come to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or maybe even the staff at Paizo has a little bit of a fatigue for that same art style. Not quite sure what the decision process here is. Now, on the cover of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, we still get a wicked rad Wayne Reynolds illustration. He's kind of been coached, or maybe it was his coaching, that led into this more orange and yellow look, which is sort of extant throughout the book, which I think is brilliant. They kind of gave a new color tone to Pathfinder, which I think is quite amazing. There's even sort of some new evolution in some of how they see their world, which has a sort of more realistic fogging or sense of depth that I think is fantastic. But the amount of Wayne Reynolds stuff that you get in this book is not okay. And unfortunately, despite the few dozen absolutely brilliant artists working on Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they are not the unique and innovative genius that is Wayne Reynolds. Wayne Reynolds sets such a bar that to have others try to come in and inherit his work, and that has been done here. So you're going to see your iconics that you know and love in the book. Like, let's get back to that Barbarian, right? Wayne Reynolds' Barbarian in 1st edition was a very androgynous woman, but very androgynous, very buckled down as far as her sort of, gender identifiers. Didn't have a really long skinny neck and wasn't, busty and hippie and so on and so forth. She's athletic, right? They have that exact same character with the Buster Sword, like Wayne Reynolds, I think, also was instrumental in bringing Buster Swords into the hobby. I think at first it was like, what's Final Fantasy weapons doing in our game? What is this? But now it's become something we expect and love. At least I do. And that's all inherited into 2nd edition. But when you see this sort of piece of art, and this is true of a lot of different characters and scenes, they are done as recreations of those 1st edition characters. They're there with similar gear. But lo, how difficult it is to follow these weighty footsteps. And as someone who has been a lifer, a fan of Wayne Reynolds, and the way it made Pathfinder what it is, I kept feeling a deeper and deeper sinking disappointment in 2nd edition for the way that I think their artists were trying to do the Wayne Reynolds thing. And I see it as overdeveloped, over-rendered, and under-innovative. And this is a problem I often critique a lot of the D&D artwork for too, is that it over-renders the stuff in a way that leaving nothing for me to imagine. If you've seen Wayne Reynolds' pencil art especially, it is astounding. And I like it actually even more than his full color work, which is brilliant. But his pencil work leaves your mind all this room to imagine color and texture. So art, Pathfinder is still some of the best you're ever going to see in any book. But their level, their bar with Wayne Reynolds was so high, this is a drop beneath that bar. There it is. Okay, so is it worth your money before I get into what I love about it? I kind of have been wanting my money back, honestly. I really like my 1st edition book. This one will probably find its way onto a shelf. And as far as me researching feats, I'm familiar with the 1st edition book already, and I'm not really getting anything new here that blows my mind. And I like looking at the older art better. So I'm not really the type to be jilted or want my money back. I know that a lot of smart people put a ton of work into this. The fans are going to love it, so I'm not that type to be like, I don't like it. But I like my first edition book better. What do I like about second edition? I really dig on their magic items. Really cool and very, very well described. Lots of them, as usual. There's boatload. I look back at my first edition book, and there's the boatload there too. But there's something sort of a little bit zestier about the ones in second edition. And this is not a huge mega thumbs up, but it is a thumbs up, and so it deserves to be said. I really like the magic items in second edition. A lot of them you're going to recognize from before, but there's some new little treats hidden in there. I'm a huge nerd for loot, but I still think there's more embracing to be done by our sort of industry leaders, which to me are D&D and Pathfinder, for the fun of hyper-simplified loot rolling tables. Now, I know that 5th edition has some really basic ones. They go by letter, right? But even that, to me, it takes a little too long at the table to be like, okay, you need one roll on table F and one roll on table K and stuff like that. When you get into Pathfinder, in second edition, you go all the way back here to the magic items. Oh, look there. I turned right to Frostbrand. That was one of the ones I was going to talk about. You have all this wonderfulness. And here you have 17 level permanent item. Here you have items in this sort of presentation, right? But how am I going to begin to roll on these? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So maybe there's some kind of phone app where I can hit a button and roll up some random treasure, but somebody out there still using GW Basic like I did way back in the day needs to make a super sweet Pathfinder magic item roll table that prints out or something. I don't know. Whew. So there it is. That's kind of the whole deal. That's really almost everything I wanted to say. So am I still eyeballing my cart on Amazon every once in a while, which has like the main books queued up? Yes, I'm still kind of curious about the difference in their new bestiary versus the old one, only out of a sort of academic researcher kind of twisted compulsion. But as a player, like, hey, I'm going to get into role-playing tabletop. Whoa, it's a bit wild. You guys know that I'm always talking about how much I love the AD&D second edition rules cyclopedia because it is an RPG in a book. And I guess this might be my closing comment. WotC and D&D in general, thank you for having the decency for calling your opening book a player's handbook, not a core rule book. If you call something a core rule book, you damn well better have monsters. You damn well better have all the character stuff in there. And you damn well better have everything that a GM needs to run the game in an intuitive fashion. And if you don't call it a frickin' core rule book. Between your super high prices, your lack of editing, and your overall maximalism, Paizo, you're giving me a little bit of cringe on like reaching for my wallet before I've finished eating dinner here. I would love it if you called this a player's handbook and cut out half the book and made this just that fundamental player's side. Then our next book is monsters, and then our third book is game mastering. Right away, half my feeling of being jilted on this purchase would be gone. So thanks, WotC. You guys know me, I'm actually pretty critical of 5th edition, but as far as overall innovation for our hobby, I really got to take my hat off if I were wearing one for D&D 5th edition as compared to Pathfinder 2nd edition. We have waited 10 years for this and 10 great years of Pathfinder to really just get what one reader online that I noticed called reheated soup. Reheated soup. That is not a very flattering evaluation. So there you have it. Please make your own decision. Get out there and get some other reviews from online. I know a lot of people are talking about Pathfinder 2nd edition right now, and they should be. Paizo is a colossus. They should be blowing our minds, and I'm sure they will in coming years. But right now it's this decision, wow, do I really need to think in 2nd edition? And if you hang out with Pathfinder heads, yeah, sorry, you're stuck. You need to go spend $60. Because real Pathfinder fans are going to be like, oh yeah, we've got some streamline, we've got improvement here. This like broken piece no longer is in there. This exploit is gone. They're going to know every in and out, and they love that about Pathfinder. And rock on with your bad self. I'm not saying that my opinion is in any way definitive. Just a YouTuber, and I generally have taste around really concise and brief RPGs. Down in the, between 60 and 100 page range to me is where I really thrive. And this stuff, a little bit crazy. So please make up your own mind, get out there and do your own research. Either way, you're going to have a blast sitting and camping out with this book, whether you get mad at it or you're happy with it. It's a fun book to sit with. It is big. You don't want it on your lap. It's like having a computer on your lap. So I actually have this funny little pillow. I think it's meant to have it like a meditation bell sit on this pillow, but I use it to rest my Pathfinder core book on and read it like Gandalf down in the basement of Minas Tirith. Although I need some more like weird bottles around me and stuff. And I also need to be an Astari, but that is another video. So you guys make up your own mind about it. Rock on, and if you're a Pathfinder fan, you probably already have the damn book, and you don't even need to watch this video. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Please consider jumping over to my Patreon, where I'm inventing a new campaign setting right now that is exclusive to Patreon. They kind of took my leash off, and I'm going crazy, having a lot of fun with that, and you can listen to a bunch of podcasts and other stuff. I'll be back pretty soon with more videos because I've been having a great time talking to you guys live. We might even talk about Call of Cthulhu. And there's a lot of drawing ahead to be done, so why not just let you guys in on some of that? A lot of people have been saying, dude, come on, please. I like watching you draw when I wear my pajamas. Who can argue with that reasoning? So thanks you for tuning in, everybody. This is another stream with 231 of you three-armed weirdos. This is crazy. These streams are huge. So thank you so much. Dalen Johnson, 4E Warhammer. There's a great, by the way, just let me take this chance on that note. Thank you for bringing that up. You've got to get over to Dave Thomavor's review channel. I'll put a comment once this video is up. Put a comment. He is reviewing RPG books with such patience and rigor and detail. It's amazing, and his channel needs to blow up ASAP. If blowing up is a good thing in this world. I don't know. Everybody likes a little bit of view time for their hard work. But his review of all kinds of different RPGs is brilliant. That's Dave Thomavor on YouTube. Go check that out. Yeah, there's a lot of new channels that have been emerging. I'm sure you guys are already aware of them. Go check them out. But most of all, you guys, thank you for tuning in such numbers. I can't believe it. 250 people at one point, all hanging out, thinking about Pathfinder. There is a lot to think about. Zweihander is another huge book that's out there with a huge following. There is so much nowadays to cross-compare and hybridize into your game. You are a Runehammerian. You're one of the shield walls, so I know you're doing it. I know you're homebrewing. I know you're hacking it all together into your actual game. Keep on keeping on. Be that badass. Keep it real, don't steal. You're always going to get a deal. All right? And you know the number one thing, and I know there's hard times out there that people are experiencing nowadays, just like a lot of the time there's tragic and terrible things happening in this world. I'm not here to talk about them on this channel, but I am here to say, everyone out there, hang in there. Good luck. Like, hold tight with your struggles. It's going to be better, and make this world a tiny bit better tomorrow than it is today. Do your best. And if you need help from someone, don't be afraid to ask. Like, we got to stick together. One love to all sentient beings. It's your old buddy, Hank Inferno. I'm going to go back into the internet, and I'm going to finish this beer and maybe, like, I don't know, get a cupcake or some beef jerky or something. Peace, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Why? Ooh, wah, wah. Ow. Da, 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 da,